Welcome to Marina Hills Animal Hospital Medical Moment. Today we're going to talk about chocolate. It turns out that while chocolate is quite yummy and delicious for people, dogs do not metabolize methylxanthines very well. Methylxanthines are found in chocolate and in coffee, caffeine, and what would be a normal amount for a person is too much for a dog. And so, as a rule, we don't give dogs chocolate or coffee or anything that rhymes with chocolate and coffee. The whole situation really has to do with dosage. They can get away with eating very small amounts, but very quickly they can get into trouble. And there's a lot of variables that determine whether an individual pet is going to get sick or not. One variable, of course, is how big is the pooch, and the second is how much methylxanthine did they ingest. And as it turns out, different products have different amounts of methylxanthine. As you might imagine, white chocolate doesn't have very much at all, in fact almost none, whereas milk chocolate, semi-sweet, dark chocolate, cocoa powder has more and more as you move up the list of cocoa derivatives. And the same is true of coffee beans, espresso, etc. And so we're often asked the question, my dog got into the chocolate, what's going to happen? The best thing if your pet eats chocolate is to bring your pet and whatever it is they ate, or at least the wrapper or knowledge of what the product is, to the veterinarian, rather than spending time on the phone trying to sort it out. That way, if the dosage is a toxic dose, we can quickly move to treatment. Specifically, when dogs eat chocolate, we make them vomit to clear it from their stomach, and then we treat their symptoms as needed. And what do we treat? Well, it depends on what they're doing. Sometimes they're irritated and anxious, and so we give them sedatives. Sometimes they have racing hearts, and so we give medication that treats that. Sometimes they're actually seizuring, and rarely, but they can actually be having trouble breathing. And depending on how many of those symptoms we're seeing determines how aggressively we treat them. One interesting thing about chocolate, the actual cocoa, the methylxanthine, would be rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream. But what dogs usually eat is something like this, which is, well, it has methylxanthines in it. It has a lot of fats. Buttery things slow down the absorption from the GI tract. So inducing vomiting, encouraging dogs to vomit up what it is they've eaten, can be effective for up to 4 hours after they've eaten chocolate. Whereas other things would be passed through the stomach in that much time. So that's one of the things that we often do. This, of course, is on the eve of Valentine's Day that we're making the video, but dogs often get into chocolate around Christmas time as well, particularly when you take the chocolate and you wrap it up and hide it underneath the Christmas tree. Dogs aren't fooled by that for a second, so please don't do that. They'll find the chocolate every time. The other thing to be aware is that when dogs eat chocolate, they often eat the packaging. And sometimes, depending on what they got into, the packaging might actually cause more trouble than the chocolate itself. But either way, those pets need our help. Well, they often need our help. So that's the story on chocolate. If your pet don't give your dog chocolate, and if they do eat chocolate, and you have a great big Siberian husky who eats a small little chocolate kiss, I would not panic. But if a small dog eats a large volume, or a big dog eats a really big volume, then they're going to need care. Particularly if we're talking about the dark chocolates or baking powder, the cocoa powder, they can get toxic quite quickly.